Now for the latest on the Russian war on Ukraine, now in its 11th day. A very short-lived respite from fighting later yesterday. Humanitarian corridors were opened and thousands of Ukrainians were set to escape the city of Mariupol. Not before Russian forces allegedly broke this temporary ceasefire. President Vladimir Zelensky is begging NATO for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And the Russian airstrikes are escalating. But NATO is refusing this request. Our Defence Minister Peter Dutton said a no-fly zone would carry the risk of a nuclear conflict.
Well, it would definitely help if it didn't lead to a nuclear conflict. And if it escalated beyond that into this threat of a nuclear response, then that would be catastrophic.
There are also reports Russian forces have taken a psychiatric hospital north of the capital, holding at least 600 patients captive. And 7 people, including children, were reportedly killed in an airstrike. Meanwhile, troops are still closing in on the Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv and crucial economic hub of Odessa. Not to mention there have been further sanctions, with MasterCard and Visa now suspending operations in Russia as the impact of this war continues to cascade through the global economy. Svitlana Zalishcuk is a former member of Ukraine Parliament. She's now Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister's Foreign Policy Advisor. She managed to flee Kyiv with her family, and she joins me live now for an interview from Western Ukraine. Svitlana, thank you so much for your time. I know it's valuable as a senior advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister, and you're in the middle of this horrific war brought on by Putin. You've described Putin as the Hitler of our time. If this is the case, do you think all of us in the West have done enough to stop him and this war?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's extremely important to have the floor for Ukrainians to spread the message. Now, answering your question, I think that collective West knew of what Putin was capable of, because Ukraine's invasion into Ukraine is not his first war, right? We have seen how Putin invaded Georgia in 2008 and occupied the territory. We know very well that he participated in Syria war, creating proper humanitarian crisis and refugee wave, using the chemical weapon against the civilians in Syria. We also knew that he invaded Ukraine yet in 2014, and he annexed a big part of our land, Crimea. He occupied Donbass. He interfered in many elections around the world, in US, in France, in Germany, you name it. He poisoned the leader of opposition in Russia, Navalny, a very cynical, like unhuman behavior towards his own people, Russians, media, journalists, civil society, and so on. So yes, I think that we knew and saw who Putin is, but we didn't do enough to stop him, to prevent him from further war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the terror around the world. Now the question is what we should do, what we can do in order to stop this war in the heart of Europe.
And that is the crucial question, because we didn't just know about Putin, what he was capable of from his history, but American intelligence knew well in advance that Putin might invade Ukraine, and your government has been for months now begging for lethal weapons to help it protect itself. This has only come belatedly, some would argue too late, when you're in the middle of this war. So what does need to happen now, apart from the no-fly zone that Zelensky is making clear he needs? What else does Ukraine, does your government need right now?
Yes, so first of all, I'd like to say that you're absolutely right. We were informed that Putin is amassing troops around Ukrainian border. So we could have prepared much better. And the Ukrainian government did ask for more weapons, but NATO and some European countries were blocking granting Ukraine with more equipment to protect ourselves. Now it's, of course, also some of the answers are delayed because the logistic is much more difficult, and it's much more difficult to bring to Ukraine any weapon that we can use to defend our land. Now, answering what can be done further. Well, no-fly zone is is one of the main requests from Ukrainian government to our international partners. Why? Because at the moment, what we see is that Putin obviously believed that it's going to be a victorious war within 2 days. His sprint didn't work. He met a very strong resistance, but this is what makes him even angrier. And we see that he escalates the conflict to the extent that he hits more and more. There are more assaults on civilian areas, civilian infrastructure. We have more than 3,000 people died. We have 20 kids killed. We have 800 children wounded. And these numbers are just growing. Even this night, there were massive attacks on a number of the cities, in particular civilian areas. So we are asking for no-fly zone to get protection from those missiles that are hitting peaceful, innocent people. We don't ask NATO to come and fight, their soldiers to come to our land and fight. We will do that ourselves. But we ask international community to help us to protect our land from Russian missiles.
Svitlana, you made the difficult decision to escape with your family. You're still in Ukraine. You're in Western Ukraine, I understand. How hard was it for you to get out? And how hard is it for other people? There must be hundreds of thousands who are desperately trying to flee Kyiv and other cities that are under siege and are just trapped and are stuck.
Thank you for this question. When we decided to leave, there were already explosions happening around Kyiv. And still many people decided to stay, despite the fact that we already could see that that the war started and a proper full-fledged war. But it's so difficult to kind of like believe in what's happening because we are Europe. Our country doesn't differ much from any other Eastern European country, So it's so insane that people were like, okay, maybe it's going to just stop within hours, or maybe it's just 1 day, so we better stay, But then it doesn't stop. And it only escalates. And the window to leave the city is also closing because now the entrances are blocked from many sides of the capital. And on the somehow southern direction is more or less safe. So it was very difficult to leave because it's our home. It's our everything there. I have with me like just a computer, a pair of jeans and a sweater, and my dog and my husband, and that's all, And I don't know if we are coming back and when are we coming back? And is it my life now to be a refugee? I don't have my home, my country anymore. So it is very difficult to leave, but also impossible to stay because it's obviously it's not safe and so many people are dying now.
Yeah, it's such a tragic circumstance. And Svitlana, can I say in Australia, we've watched your country's spirit and courage and determination to fight when there was very little in the way of support from NATO and from Europe and belatedly from the United States. And I can only say we watch on with awe and admiration and, of course, deep worry. And I hope that you and your family and your people can stay safe throughout this and hopefully one day return home. So thank you enormously for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that was Svitlana Zalishcuk there, Foreign Policy Advisor to Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister.